let's start off by doing a quick poll. And the first poll is, have you used paid social advertising in Facebook or LinkedIn for lead generation? So if you'd like to, I'm going to just start that poll off now. So if you'd like to check one of these boxes or two of these boxes, if you're also using other advertising as well. So we've got an answer already. So as that starts to come in, we can get an idea of how many of you are actually using LinkedIn ads, how many are using other platforms ads, and how many of you use Facebook ads. If you've used Facebook ads for B2C as well, I'm quite happy for you to put in a comment to that effect as well while we're waiting for a few more people to arrive. Okay, so about a third of you so far have used Facebook ads. Nobody's used LinkedIn ads, which is very interesting. About a third of you haven't used either, and a quarter of you have used something else. So we've got 14 responses so far. Chris, how does that compare with the number of attendees? Because you've got the other screen open. Have we got most of the guys responding?
We've got 19. We've got 19 attendees. So what's that, about half?
Yeah, yeah. A few people have messaged to say they can't make it now, but this session is being recorded, so you will be able to come back to it. Okay, well, that's really interesting. I was expecting a few more people to have tried LinkedIn, to be honest, but it looks like most people have had a go at Facebook ads. Let's go and try another one, and let's see what else we can find out. So let's do this one first then. So what are the barriers of using Facebook or Instagram ads for lead generation? So you've got a choice of answers here. Lack of experience in setting up Facebook and Instagram ads, costs are too high or insufficient budget, you can't get buy-in from the senior team, you can't get enough conversions or at an affordable cost per acquisition, my audience doesn't use Facebook or targeting isn't precise enough, and any other issues. And you can actually click on more than one response. So far, I've had one person admitting that they've not got any experience in using Facebook and Instagram. So a few more people are responding now. Costs are too high. And that's really interesting because, I mean, Chris, do you want to comment on Facebook costs?
Yeah, Facebook costs or LinkedIn costs?
Facebook costs.
So yeah, Facebook. So generally, it's typically cheaper than LinkedIn, which is why I think most people tend to start there. I think one of the other reasons most people tend to start with Facebook is that actually, from an ads platform, it's a lot friendlier. It's a lot easier to use. If people tried to use the LinkedIn ads platform, even up to like 18 months, 2 years ago, it was nowhere near as good as what it is now. So I think that there's a couple of reasons why I think people have gone more towards Facebook to start with. I think they had a better ad offering to start with, and typically the cost per click was a tenth of the price sometimes of what people were seeing they were paying in LinkedIn.
And we've got somebody that's got another problem or an issue, so it'd be quite interesting for whoever that is to put a comment in the box, in the chat box on the previous page when we get back to it. Let's do the final one, which is why people are. Whoops, sorry, I've just pressed the wrong button. Let's go and find out why people have got barriers for using LinkedIn, because at the moment nobody's using LinkedIn. So again, is this a lack of experience of using the LinkedIn ads campaign? To be honest, once you've used Facebook, LinkedIn's pretty similar. The costs are too high, or you've got insufficient budget. Again, can't get buy-in from the senior management team. Do not get enough conversions. Any other issues? So it looks like it's a combination of lack of experience and budgets and costs. Interesting. I think once you've tried Facebook, you'll probably find LinkedIn's relatively simple. They've made the layout quite similar now. So you might find that the things that you've done traditionally in Facebook, you actually might find actually easier in LinkedIn. What about cost then, Chris? Is there any secrets to using LinkedIn at a low cost?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is always going to be slightly more expensive than Facebook in most cases, but you can get there with kind of cost efficiency. I think the problem with LinkedIn is because you can go that much more specific. I think people tend to sometimes go too specific too quickly. So it's that trade-off of your audience size as well. And also the ad creative can sometimes have a lot to do with it as well in terms of getting a decent click-through rate. So you can get down below kind of £2, £1.50 cost per click. We've got campaigns at the minute which are running around somewhere between £1 to £1.50 cost per click on LinkedIn. So it can be done. In terms of cost per leads, it's all relative to your business. Some businesses will happily pay kind of north of £25 for a lead, and then others are on much smaller margins, so you need to be looking at 10 to 15. But you can do it. It just takes a bit of time with targeting. LinkedIn is a slightly different kind of layout to Facebook in terms of the way you structure your campaigns. But yeah, once you've kind of got familiar with it and you've got a few audiences set up and can test, you can get that efficiency.
And there are a couple of LinkedIn campaign types like the in-mail or basically message ads really that come in your inbox, and also some of the video views that are quite a lot cheaper than maybe sponsored posts are in LinkedIn.
Yeah, so in-mail you can typically be around 15 pence per send, and most campaigns see anywhere between kind of a 50 to 70% open rate. So that's what you're paying, probably 30 pence to get someone to open. And the difference with an in-mail as opposed to a post is it's really easy for someone to kind of scroll past your post in the feed, and if you're paying on a CPM, it doesn't really matter, you've paid anyway. Whereas if you do use in-mail, you do have that extra metric of knowing whether someone's opened it, and if they've opened with it, obviously they've actively engaged. So they can be quite cost effective. They're also limited in terms of the number that users receive. LinkedIn purposely do that so people's in-mail or message inbox doesn't get completely bombarded. And LinkedIn also launching obviously message ads as well. So I'm sure they'll be quite cost effective. So you can do it. Video views again. We had a campaign recently. The video that the client ran was over a minute long. But it's still got a cost per completed view of less than 20 pence. Typically, cheap. Yeah, typically you will pay, well, you do pay on a cost per view basis. LinkedIn, and you can see those come in at like kind of 2 pence. The thing to bear in mind with that is a cost per view. A view is only 2 seconds, 50% in screen, which is why we manually calculate cost per completed view for our clients, because it's a more accurate metric of whether someone actually engaged with the video or not. And a completed view in LinkedIn is 97% or more of the whole video watched.
And of course, if you create video views, you can then follow up with some form of conversion campaign as well. The other advantage of the message ads, of course, is you get them actually in your inbox as well. So, okay, well, look, let's get on with the presentation. Chris is going to be manning the chat. So if you've and the Q&A, we've already got a Q&A come up. You can see you've got a red. So James has asked a question now. If we get loads and loads and loads of Q&A, this particular piece of software, which is from Big Marker, has got this upvote. So if we get inundated with questions, if anybody really likes the question, if you want to upvote it. So as we go through, Chris is going to start answering those. I'm going to start my presentation. So yes, looking at our old pub. Yes, it seems very strange. I've been in self-isolating or social distancing for 3 weeks now, although I have popped back a couple of times just to sort of check on the post. I'm a bit worried about the swans. They're getting very hungry. You can see the river by the side of the pub. And they're not getting their usual daily dose of food from Sook. So we might have to go back there and make sure the swans are okay. Anyway, let's carry on. So a little bit about me. So anybody that knows me knows that I came to Leicester to do biological sciences 40 years ago, which is quite scary. You can see the team on the left-hand side, and you also know, most of you know, that I'm a bit of a rocker and also a massive Formula One fan. I'm missing the grandkids and the family terribly. I'm used to having my granddaughter and grandson around here most weekends, and at the moment they're obviously not here. But I do have these massive 2 Maine Coon cats. This is when they were kittens. They're probably about that. One of them is about that size between them now. And also you got the Drum Awards, which was the award that we won last year for the work that we did with Switch My Business. Anyway, you're not here to find out about us, so I'm going to zoom in and cover what we're going to do today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about some of the ad objectives and platforms that you can use for lead generation. What you need to do to get ready to run a campaign, choosing the right ad objectives for each platform, audience targeting, some of the ad formats. I'm going to give you the case study around the A10 marketing framework, which if you go over to the site, you can download at any time. And then I've got a few top tips. Okay, so let's get going. First of all, just to sort of get you an idea of the type of marketing that you want to do and what format and what type of platform to choose. Well, first of all, you've got to know what you want to achieve and whether you're trying to communicate with your existing fans and community, or whether you're trying to get visibility to new users. And in our case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to generate leads or sales. And what we tend to do is relate back to the sales funnel, which I've got on the right-hand side, and the different stages of engaging with potential customers, which is obviously brand awareness, acquisition, consideration or research stage, conversion, retention, and advocacy. Now, interestingly, nearly all of the platforms are now using this as a structure for choosing their ad objectives. Even Google, if you go into the smart campaigns within Google Ads, they're using something similar. And just as extreme, Facebook's got 11 choices of ad objectives based on this model. The final thing you need to be considering is your target audience. And this is obviously, in our case, we're talking about B2B. And most of the time, we're talking about the individual characteristics of that audience. But we also can be looking at things like their interests and behavior, what they've interacted with. And in the case of LinkedIn, we've got a whole load of interesting company targeting options as well. And we'll see as we go through that there's some massive advantages of using LinkedIn for B2B from a perspective of much more granular targeting. And we do have a presentation on audience targeting and using audiences, which we'll present in a later webinar. The other thing that you can do, which is really powerful, is you can create your own audiences, and there's different ways of doing that. But the majority of this is based on visitors to your site and any uploaded lists from your CRM system. Okay, so when we start to look at classifying paid advertising, they tend to be 2 ways of classifying them. First of all, by the actual digital marketing channel. So we're mainly going to be talking about paid social today, but we've also got paid search, paid display, shopping ads, and then sort of technical and hybrid. So things like programmatic TV from AdSmart can use audience targeting in a really interesting way. And I'm sure we'll get Chris to do a presentation on programmatic and video on demand at a later session. And then the other thing, of course, is by the business objective, which is what we were talking about just a minute ago, and the different stages of the sales funnel. We do have to take into consideration, though, that some businesses aren't only going to be running they're not only going to be trying to get their conversions online, and some people will be getting offline sales, including calls. And in the good old days, you know, people go into a store, or having a visit from a sales team. So you just need to be aware that some of the conversions actually happen away from the website, and that can cause issues with tracking as well. With regards to the range of platforms that you can use, this is a really good table. And in fact, Holly from our paid team, Holly Kelly, actually produced a blog article on this, where we looked at all the different platforms that are available using paid ads, well, as many as we could find at that stage, and then divided them into the different channel types, and then did a matrix with the different ad objectives. And you can see that, you know, lots and lots of them are able to do all, well, most of them were able to do the sort of consideration phase. And then some are very much focused on conversions and also the use of remarketing and retargeting, whereas some of them are really designed around awareness and actually just trying to make, you know, potential users aware of a brand. And this really depends on whether the activity happens on the platform. So, for example, a lot of the advertising in Facebook happens within the platform, and it's not really designed to get people over to your website. And of course, once they're over to the website, there's various advantages of being able to track them or get them to sign up to email lists and pixel them and then be able to remarket to them. So this does cause issues with attribution and tracking. And also it does mean that if you have got a limited budget, you may want to focus on the ones that are going to just get a conversion or a lead, because you might not have enough budget to really target, you know, or really spend your budget on awareness. The exception is this sort of a two-phased approach where you may well want to do some awareness, such as a video views, and then follow up with a conversion. But we'll talk about that one later. This slide is one that normally builds, and it's much easier to see it if it's in something like PowerPoint, because we can actually see how it builds. But what's basically happening on this slide, on the left-hand side, we've got the platform, or in this case, Facebook. And then on this side, we've got the actual website of the brand. So you can see the different combinations of things that you can do. If you just want an awareness campaign, then what's going to happen is that they're going to see the ad. If you want an engagement campaign, then you might get them to like or follow your ad and maybe become a fan. One of the things that most people aren't aware of is that, and this is particularly important for lead generation, is that there is actually an ad objective called lead generation ads. And this is where the form is actually within Facebook or LinkedIn. You can also have this with a couple of other different ad types like YouTube video views, true views as well. But they fill in the form while on the platform, and which means they don't interrupt their day, they don't go over to your site, and you can actually collect a lot of useful information. That compares with more like a traffic or a click ad where they go over to the site, and that could be a content page or a product page if you're doing e-commerce, and then they go on to a thank you page where you can then click through to an ebook or a white paper. Once, of course, they're over to the website, then what you will see is the ability to track them individually, and because you've got a pixel on the site, and that's a massive advantage because it allows us to do sequential and also remarketing across channel. Chris, do you just want to make a quick point about some of the advantages of doing lead forms actually on the site versus conversion ads? Because I just need to get a drink of water, and it would be useful if you could just comment on, you know, some of the stuff you've been doing with the two types. Are you with me? Yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
Just had to unmute my mic. Yeah, so you've got a few options. When you use the lead gen form in, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn, it's a way of obviously getting around the fact that you might not have the functionality to have forms embedded within your website. If you haven't got a particularly great mobile experience, sometimes using the native forms is a better user experience from your customers' kind of point of view. And it's really easy. You get the leads and you can just download them as a spreadsheet. If you use leads on your page, obviously you've then got to make sure that you've got the appropriate tracking and objectives set up to make sure that you understand when someone has successfully submitted a form as well. So the lead gen format can sometimes be a bit simpler for you to kind of set up and manage yourself. You're not going to rely on getting someone to set up forms on your website or rely on them to set up the tracking and events to make sure the form has been correctly submitted. The disadvantage is, unless you've got LinkedIn or Facebook directly integrated, from a data point of view, like I say, that data is held in a spreadsheet. It doesn't go straight into your CRM system or your database if you've got one set up. So there are pros and cons. There's also one little caveat with the lead gen forms, both in Facebook and LinkedIn. Most people make the mistake of just selecting email as one of the fields. Now, the problem is, because these forms, when they're in the platform, they try and be as helpful as they can. They auto-populate based on that user's profile information. Now, typically, most people sign up to Facebook or LinkedIn with their personal email address. But as a B2B business, what you're probably trying to capture is their work email address. So when you create the form, it's worth just deleting the email field. They're really simple WYSIWYG drag and drop, but it'll automatically add email as a field for you. What you'll want to do is delete that and then replace it with a work email field, which means they'll have to manually type in their work email. And then you're probably going to have a better success rate when you're following those leads up, because you're not going to be going into their personal inbox. You're going to be getting your follow-up emails into their work inbox, which is what you want.
The other advantage of having it actually on the website, which is what you'll see with the case study, is that, of course, we're collecting email addresses. That was automatically put into our CRM system, which meant we could then email people later. They could get the ebook immediately, and they could poke around the site. And then we've also pixeled them, so if we wanted to do any follow-up marketing, we could do that as well. Okay, let's click on through to the next. I just wanted to show you some examples of what other companies are using this sort of ads for. And I've grouped these together into general awareness, downloads, which there's a heck of a lot, trials of surf demos, particularly for things like cloud-based software and Google, and then trying to get leads or service. And actually, there's less of these, although I have noticed there's a lot more at the moment. I think as people are working from home and businesses have lost trade, there's a lot of people suddenly realizing that they need to fill the gaps. So let's just have a look at some examples. So these are awareness ads across LinkedIn and Twitter. Although this is Nespresso on the right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, guys? I lost my signal. Chris, can you hear me? Chris, can you not?
I can hear you, but it's pretty broken up.
Okay. All right. We're having a little bit of a problem with.
It's pretty broken up.
With the connection here. That's the problem with being at home, unfortunately. Okay, I'll keep going, and if he has any questions, if you ask them in the slides, we'll see how we get on with the signal. Okay, we've also got platforms used for encouraging downloads. You can see you've also got some Quora ads over on the right-hand side as well. And then we've got those and free trials. We've got product ads for services. I think this one stands out really well. I think it's really bright. Again, you've got Nespresso. You've got all the different platforms here. our integrated multi approach, which I mentioned earlier on. So as said, this is a slide that Chris developed, and I think he's got a slightly better internet connection. But I think we'll just go at Chris explaining this, and we'll see how we're getting on with the sound. So Chris, do you want to explain what you were thinking of when you created this this slide?
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, what's going across the top is your typical kind of funnel. Pick up any marketing textbook, do any marketing kind of qualification, and you'll see a funnel. So this is a simplified down version. So awareness at the top, consideration in the middle, and then conversion kind of at the bottom. And then what you've got underneath that is obviously the channels on the left are the ones that you use for this kind of broad awareness. So you could have things like digital TV in there, display, YouTube, paid social. They can all be used in the same way that you can pretty much use broadcast channels. You can reach fairly large audiences fairly quickly. What that does is obviously then drives people into, if it's things like digital TV, like Sky AdSmart, for example, even though it's targeted, you're still going to be driving things like search behavior and driving people into various areas of your site or into your homepage. In consideration as well, you've also got things like other paid social that's probably a little bit more targeted with more of a education information message. But you've also got things like email and PR and stuff. All of that drives into either product or content pages on your website. And then what comes out of that, by having all of your tracking correctly set up on your website, whether it's your LinkedIn Insight tag or your Facebook Pixel, you use all of that on-site behavior to make audiences that you have kind of qualified, because you know they've come to the site, you know what they've looked at, you know what they've spent their time doing on the website. And then we follow that up with more paid social, search, display, pretty much any kind of retargeting activity that takes all of those people that visited your website, didn't complete the action that you wanted them to there and then allows you to kind of follow up and remarket to them later down the line for whatever period of time you think is appropriate. Excellent.
Okay. Let's just carry on and let's talk about what you need to do to get ready to run a campaign. Hopefully you can all still, even if the sound is not as good as it is. I think next time we'll have to go to the office and 2 meters apart and do the presentation if this is going to be the sound from home. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is prepare all your website and assets. This is to do with getting your ads and collateral ready. You want to create a posting plan. You want to get all your creative assets ready, which is your images and videos and any marketing collateral. So in our case, with the A10, we actually wrote the white paper and produced a printed copy of it. You want to get any landing pages prepared, and this could be a service or a product page you've already got. It could be a landing page with a form, and you want to link that form to your CRM system or your marketing automation system so that it's going to automatically create any lists. And also you want a thank you page after they filled in the form with the option to download the PDF version. You've also got to set up all your tracking, which will be UTM or URL codes, tracking codes. And you've also got to add any platform-specific tracking pixels. And ideally, you want to do that through Google Tag Manager, because you're going to have to set up for conversion ads, as Chris mentioned early on. You're also going to have to set up custom conversions as well based on those thank you pages. Within each ad platform, you're going to select the relevant ad platform that you want to use, and you're going to base that mainly on the target audience. You're going to have to create either an ads manager or a business manager account in Facebook and a campaign manager account in LinkedIn. You're going to need to create the necessary tracking pixels from each ads manager account and then add them to your website. Once you've actually got some pixels firing, then you're able to create some custom conversions, and that's going to be the interaction with specific pages. Ideally, you want to create that for the thank you pages, and once you've got enough data and enough people that have actually been to the thank you page, you can then create lookalike audiences based on the interaction with that thank you page. You've also got to plan your campaign structure and hierarchy, and ideally you want to do that relating to the services or products you want to promote and any ad objectives. And that's what we put in the media plan, to be honest. And then you can create campaigns for each combinations. Chris, have you got any advice on separating out campaigns for, say, Facebook and Instagram? Would you always do them in the same campaign and do that at different ad set level, or would you sometimes create separate campaigns for Instagram and Facebook?
It kind of depends. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes you're going to want to have your overarching, let's say it's just a simple traffic campaign. You may want to separate out and have Instagram completely separate to Facebook, because what you might want to do is set a separate budget for Instagram as opposed to Facebook. And we use campaign.
One of the things I was going to say is that Facebook have now copied the other platforms in the sense that the budget is set at the campaign level now rather than the sort of ad group ad set level that it was previously.
Yeah, so I was just about to say that's one of the reasons why you may want to do it. Although what you can do, if you keep Facebook and Instagram within the same campaign and you separate them out at your ad set level, Facebook has the option for you to set minimums and maximums on your ad sets. So if you had a £10 per day budget, but you didn't want Facebook to completely dominate that, you wanted to maintain an even split, what you would do is you would set a £5 ad set spend maximum on that Facebook ad set, and then obviously you could the minimums aren't guaranteed, because obviously it's tied into things like audience size and inventory availability. But technically what that would do, it would stop Facebook taking £8 or £9 a day of that £10 daily budget. It would mean that the Facebook ad set could only spend £5, leaving the other £5 available for Instagram ad sets to spend. So okay. There's two ways you can do it. Both are going to work. It's just to do with control.
And the other thing is don't assume that Instagram isn't going to work for B2B, because in fact, when we did our case study, which we'll show you in a minute, some of our best results were actually in Instagram, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to sort of understand the hierarchy, the platforms use slightly different terminology. You know, there's sometimes ad groups and ad sets, but normally the campaign is where you set the ad objective. At the ad sets level, you're doing your targeting, your placement, and your budgeting, and then the ads. We normally recommend a minimum of 3 ads per ad set, and you generally got a couple of ad sets per campaign. So this is about the simplest it will be, really.
This is where you see the biggest difference with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not structured like this. LinkedIn, you have campaign groups, campaigns, and ads. But again, you don't have that level of individual ad sets to the same kind of flexibility and degree. The other green bit's missing. Yeah, the other big difference you have, whereas in Facebook, you can have an ad set, and within that ad set, you could have a carousel ad, you could have 2 single image ads, and you could have a video ad, all within one ad set. LinkedIn, they are changing this. There's a change coming, but up until pretty much now, you can only select one creative type. So if you have a video, if you select video ads, all of the ads have to be video ads. You can't have a mixture of carousels and video. That is on the roadmap to change, though, thankfully, because it's one of the most frustrating elements to LinkedIn. But that's one of the major differences at this time.
Okay, cool. All right, well, let's just flick on to choosing ad objectives in each platform. So this is just some screenshots of each of the different campaign setup screens, the ads managers effectively. So we've got Facebook here, and of course Facebook includes Instagram and Messenger, and you've got the 9 different ad objectives, which is the first thing you do when you create a campaign. We've then got LinkedIn, And again, you've got 7 here for the different. It's not a very good clear screen, but it follows the same sort of pattern. Twitter, you've got 7, so 8, but these are just slightly different, aren't they? They're quite. Twitter's quite a lot different from the others, and really, we're not using as much Twitter as we are LinkedIn and Facebook. Have you got any clients, Chris, that Twitter is working well? We've done a bit in finance, haven't we?
Yeah, finance tends to do quite well. Twitter's pretty good if you've got something that you can get a bit of a headline out of, or a stat that kind of people can pick up. Because obviously the format's much shorter, it's much less reliant on kind of image. So it's one of those, and if you're not, it's probably one of the ones that's most kind of contextually sensitive. So if you've got something that is very much kind of current affairs and of the moment, then Twitter can work quite well. The other thing that Twitter can work quite well for is the app side of things. So app installs, because obviously you link directly through either to iOS or Play Store if it's Google. And obviously most people have got things like Touch ID and Face ID. It's quite a seamless kind of transaction experience for them to do an app install. So that's another one that you can sometimes do quite well with on Twitter. But in terms of things like conversions, it's probably not going to hold up against the likes of Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn in the same way.
It's got some very strange targeting options as well, hasn't it? Very different, weird age groups. It's particularly good if you've got a lot of influencers or sort of celebrities in your sector, or thought leaders in your sector, because you can follow their audiences. But very different setup. Another one that's a little bit different is Quora, which I used as part of the A10 marketing platform promotion, and that was actually really easy to set up. I was quite surprised. It wasn't particularly expensive, but it was very much around interests. The cost per clicks were quite low, but the conversion rates were a little bit higher. But I think that might be something that's going to become more popular going forward. The trouble with the core ads is they're tiny. You've got a feed of all these questions and you've got this little ad poking up. It doesn't really show up that well. So I'll be interested to see how this evolves. So I think Quora and things like Reddit have got a lot of potential going forward. Audience targeting then. So this is just a summary of all the different targeting options. And I think the main difference is the level of granularity that you can go in with LinkedIn. Do you just want to explain, Chris, about how skills has been really powerful when, probably most of us would think a job title as being the way to go ahead, and why skills has proved to be really powerful, and perhaps give an example of where it's worked really well?
Yeah, just on this table, this isn't much. Yeah, you've got the other slides, right? Okay, I was going to say that table is a simplified version of some of the slides we have on targeting. But yeah, the job skills is a really interesting one. So I'll give you an example. One of our clients was in the events industry. So the way they split is there obviously is a whole group of people on LinkedIn who are event coordinators and event professionals and event planners. And that's great. They're really easy to target through their job title. But what they identified is that there's a load of other people in organizations who are responsible for setting up and planning events. But the word event doesn't feature in their job title whatsoever. It could be that they're a marketing coordinator. It could be that they are the office administrator. Even personal assistants sometimes have some event planning responsibilities. So this was an example of where we took job skills instead. And what we had is things like meeting planning, meeting coordination, event planning as job skills. And we used them as skills instead of job titles. So we had our job titles audience in one campaign, and then we used pretty much anyone who had a skill that was around the idea of event planning or event management or meeting coordination. And we put those into an audience of their own as well. And what it allowed us to do is find all of the people who do that kind of event coordination, event planning as part of their job, but it's not their defining job title. So that's one of the big differences. And it means you can probably get to a load of other people that naturally would have been excluded if you just used job titles.
Excellent. What I did there was I just flicked through a couple of examples of targeting. So this is targeting on Facebook, and this is what it looks like when you're actually creating the audience. You can see the geographical. This is actually for our A10 project. So you can see we were mainly restricting our budget within a reasonable distance because at this time we were doing events as well. And then we've got all the we've got the age, gender, and then we've got the interests, which were around job title and things like interest in marketing. And then on the right hand side, we were building up the audience with the number of people. Because the answering's not worked, I just tried answering a question for James and just seeing if that's worked. So I don't know whether, James, if you go into the answered section of the Q&A, if you could let me know in the chat whether that's worked, that would be useful, because it might be that I've got permission to answer questions and Chris hasn't at the moment, in which case we might not need to find another way of getting this to work. Okay, yeah, so this is... Sorry, Chris.
That answer has worked. I can see it now. So I think it's just... I also answered Sophie's as well, but I don't think it's shown. So it's, yeah, I think it might be a permissions thing that we might need to look into.
Okay, well, perhaps you could, if you write the answers as questions, Chris, then that will solve the problem. If you want to copy your answers to their questions.
Yeah, it wasn't even letting me post it as a question. That's what I tried to. It's fine. I can. I'll pop it in the chat. I'll just put it in the public chat.
So in this slide, we've got the range of different targeting options that we've linked in, which is what we were talking about just a minute ago. They have actually added interests, which I realise this slide is a little bit older. We nicked this from an earlier version, but they've actually added interests in. Oh yes, there you are. Members' interests there, as well as member groups. So groups is quite good, because even if you've got something that's really, really niche, like a very specific engineering group or something like that, or you often find groups that are very local for specific cities, but you have got interests as well, and that's only really been around for a couple of months, so that's quite useful as well going forward. There are some restrictions in what you can do. You can't always do them both together. So, for example, I don't think you can do seniority and years experience in the same combination. So you just need to be careful, and also you need to be careful how you layer them. Whether you want and ors. So you just need to be a little bit careful about the way whether you're restricting the numbers or growing the numbers. This is the targeting on Twitter, which is a little bit difficult to see. But this was around interest and followers, and then this was targeting on Quora, and you can see I'm mainly picking up the subjects here to do with social media and digital marketing. Advertising to your own audience. This is probably the most powerful part of what we're doing, and the scary thing about this is that with the potential demise of third-party cookies, it's really difficult to know what we're going to be able to do in the future. Each platform calls it slightly different things. So custom audiences is used in Facebook and Instagram, but also, interestingly, Google and Bing call it custom audiences, or customer match. They also use that term. Then you've got tailored, matched, and audience targeting. But I suppose the most important point on this is how you can create these audiences. So the thing that surprised most people is the ability to upload a list. And this could be a list of email addresses, and account details, names of companies, using a CSV file. Chris mentioned earlier on that sometimes there's an issue with this because the email that's used in things like Facebook is often a personal one rather than a work one. And the other thing that you can do, which you may not be aware of, is that you can actually try and match your audiences from, say, maybe an Amazon list. So if you're selling on Amazon and you can't get their emails, you could try uploading names and addresses and see how you get on with that. Now, there are some GDPR implications of how you collect the data in the first place. But once you've got the data and you upload it, it then becomes an anonymized list or audience. So in a lot of respects, it's not that different from creating a targeted audience. The other great thing about uploading a list is that you can use it to identify your converted customers. So you can then create lookalikes, and also you can do it for retention strategies. So if you've got something like a utility or a phone contract, and you've got a certain number of clients that every month are going to their contracts are coming to an end, then you can create lists within both the platforms and then target them. And this is particularly powerful in Facebook because the actual size of the audience is only about 30. So we normally match about a third. So as long as you've got over 100 people in your lists, you're likely to match with your uploaded lists. We talked quite a lot about the pixels and remarketing based on where they've been on the site. This needs tracking and tagging, and you need 1 pixel for each platform. And most of these work by combinations of different pages. So, for example, if we all went to John Lewis' website today and looked at some black jeans, but we didn't go to the shopping cart, then you could create a audience based on the people that were on that page or in that category, but didn't go to the thank you page or didn't go to the shopping cart, and then you can retarget to them. The other thing you can do is the activity on the platform. This is restricted to certain ones, and this is based on the behavior. So this is very powerful for things like watching videos and then doing a follow-up. And I'll get Chris to comment on that one in a minute. So this is similar to the diagram he walked us through just a minute ago. And then the ability to create lookalike audiences or similar audiences based on the ones that have either converted through the pixel or from the uploaded list. So would you like to add some comments on some of those? There's some really interesting strategies there, isn't there?
Yeah. So I'm going to focus on the one that's activity on the platform, because I think it's one of the ones that is probably most easily overlooked. Everyone kind of sets up a pixel and then does the whole added to cart but didn't purchase kind of audience. But one of the things you can do, especially if you've got something that's either new or quite complex, is you can run a video views campaign that effectively introduces your product and explains what it is and what it does. And then from that, if you've been running a series of video ads, then what you can do is you can create audiences based off people who've watched increments of those videos. So you can say, build me an audience of anyone who watched 25% or more of any of these videos, and you go through and you select them. That becomes an ideal audience then to use. That becomes
Is that your co-worker?
Yeah, that becomes an ideal audience to use for a traffic campaign or a conversion campaign, because you know that there's been a certain level of kind of understanding and engagement with your kind of product or service. The other one is to build an audience based off anyone. You may have been running organic social on Facebook and Instagram for some time and built up a decent sized kind of audience. And now you're ready to start paying for ads and marketing to those customers as well. You can create audiences based on people who have liked your page, people who have liked any kind of post or ad. And it's just a way of, again, leveraging a bit of that kind of work you've already put in with people. The other thing to do as well is, if you've got a really engaged organic community, you can create these audiences because you can apply them as an exclusion. So you can say, don't use my paid advertising budget to show my ads to these people because they're quite engaged from an organic point of view. I want to focus on getting new. So again, using them as an exclusion is another thing you can do.
And the two stage is very powerful, because sometimes a product could apply to both trade and customers. And if you can work out who the engaged audience are, a lot of these first level engagements like video views are very, very cheap. Whereas you might actually want to engage with them with a conversion ad at a separate stage, but you only want to do that with a narrower amount of the audience, because the cost of the landing page views or the conversions are generally quite a lot more expensive than an initial video view. Cool. So this is what we mean by retargeting or remarketing. It doesn't really matter how the visitor got to the website. It could be through, they might have seen an advert on the TV, even with a vanity URL, or they could have come in from social media or from organic SEO. But however they arrive on the website, that what's going to happen is they're going to be tagged by a number of pixels, depending on what platforms you're doing advertising in. One of the nice things about doing Google Ads remarketing is it actually uses the analytics tag, and we can create quite complicated and sophisticated audiences using analytics combinations of dimensions and metrics. Once the user exits from the site, then they're going to see the ad everywhere. So my example of going on to John Lewis, if I then went into Facebook, I'd see a John Lewis ad. It might even be a dynamic ad with the actual product in it. Or if I went into Gumtree, I'll see a Google ad. If I did another search in Google, I'm going to get a John Lewis ad, probably in a higher position than it would have been before. So the advertising is sort of set up separately, but it's used your behavior on the website as an indication of how valuable that audience is. And again, if you've got somebody that's converted, you really should be adding them as negative, because you don't want to keep on showing ads to people that have already bought a product. Ad formats then. So this is the in-feed, in-stream. So this is the ads that we use for the A10 marketing one, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. They tend to be a large image. You've also got lead generation ads. This is normally a graphic, and it actually goes through each of the different stages. But the thing about these is it does self-fill some of the details from the profile, as Chris was saying earlier on. And then you've also got the ability to click through and go through to the website. So you don't want to take them through to another form page, another landing page. You want to take them directly through to a thank you page where they can download the white paper or the article there and then. You've got video ads, which we've been talking about quite a lot. They tend to be quite cheap. If you are going to be doing social video ads, you need subtitles. You need to be aware of the format, and Chris has got a lot of presentations on this, and this is actually our planned talk for 2 weeks' time. So can you just remind me of the title of what you're going to talk about in 2 weeks, Chris?
Oh, I've changed the title of it a few times. It's something along the lines of getting the most out of your video advertising in digital. Okay. It's something along those lines. It includes all sorts of stuff: format, subtitling and captioning, size, time length, aspect ratio, retargeting. Stuff. Yeah, loads of different bits.
Okay, cool. And we'll send another link round for that in the next, probably on Monday now. Okay, then you've got LinkedIn message ads. These are the really cheap ones. I actually did an audience quote yesterday, and it was at 15 pence per send. One of the interesting things about this is that you do get them straight into your email, and the opening rate is really, really high, much higher than normal emails, sort of 50%. So if you're trying to get to specific people, it's a very, very good way. LinkedIn requires an audience of at least 300 to send. So you just need to be aware that you've got a big enough audience. And you can drip feed this in. So, if you set up, if it's 15p and you have £15 a day, then you're obviously going to get 100. But you don't always get that much. You don't always spend as much, because, of course, they do throttle the amount of times you get it in sponsored ads, which is what Chris was talking about earlier on. And you've got to rely on people actually being in LinkedIn, because they only really serve you the ads when you're actually active. This is the case study. I think this is the final section now, because I know we're getting near to 11 o'clock. And this was the case study on downloading the A10 marketing framework. And if you want to go and get a PDF version of it, if you just go and search for A10 marketing framework, or if you just do a search in the top of the right hand side, you can download the PDF. What we did was we created a landing page, and although this landing page looks really boring, it has between 30 and 50% conversion rate. So sometimes, you know, simple is best, and you'll notice that in this particular page, the menu's gone. There is more information further down, so it's not going to be blacklisted by somebody like Google because it's just a data collection form. And all the fields feed straight into SharpSpring, which is our marketing automation software. As somebody fills this in, we create a list. We use UTM codes because we've got this running in social media, but we've also got it running in display ads as well. I keep trying to click the down button, and this is the LinkedIn messages that we had. So this is what it looks like when you create a LinkedIn message. You can include some customization. So this is dear first name, and then it's a little bit of a short message saying exactly what they're going to get in it. This worked out a little bit too expensive because of the cost of this. Although, as I said, message ads have become quite a lot cheaper. When I think we first started doing message ads, they were nearer 40p. And they're now nearer 15, so it's probably worth resending some of these again. This was what we call a spotlight ad, which was a complete waste of time, and I wouldn't recommend those at all unless you're doing recruitment. So what we did was we created a whole loads of campaigns across all of these different platforms, including Quora, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then Facebook. And these were the different landing, different ad objectives. So we did landing page views, clicks, conversions, lead generation ads, message ads, and spotlight ads. And then this will give you some indication of the targeting that we were doing. In the next slide, what you can see was the results. Now, this is quite early on. So this was when we'd only got a couple of hundred conversions. We're now at nearly 1,500. And at that time, you can see, for example, the cheapest was actually Instagram. In job titles, and we got 92 conversions at £2.83. It does vary a lot by day. So at the moment, at the weekend, I got conversions at 80p, which is actually cheaper than landing page views in some of our other campaigns. Yeah, on Monday, I only got 2 conversions for 10 quid. So you do see quite a lot of day-to-day variability. So you're better off looking over a few days. But you can see the ones that work really, really well. And Instagram was a big surprise to us. We weren't expecting Instagram to work as well. But we did find that we got some really good results, and that actually still works pretty well. We now find that lookalikes work the best, and that's partly due to the fact that it's more targeted based on our conversions, but also the audience is much bigger. And I'll get Chris to explain why that's important in a second. LinkedIn, really, it was only the message ads. Actually, later on, we did a little bit better than that. We got them down to nearer 10, but we did end up stopping those. But the main feed ads were just too expensive. The cost per clicks were over £5. Cure, I think if we'd run it a little bit longer, that probably would have been okay. And Twitter was fine. Well, these are okay if you're doing a service promotion, but if you're trying to just get downloads, when you can get to, you know, £1 to £2, you can see what we focus most of our effort over here. Chris, do you just want to comment on about why the audience size is important when it comes to the costs?
Yeah, so in its simplest terms, pretty much all advertising works on a supply and demand model, and that's how the cost per thousand or CPM is generally calculated. So if you had a very niche group of people, let's say 10,000 people, but you had 100 advertisers who all wanted to try and get their ads in front of that same group of people, the CPM would be a lot higher than, let's say, an audience of 1 million people that only had 10 advertisers who wanted to show their ads to those people. So what you're always going to be trying to do with your audiences is you're going to be trying to balance basically being as specific as you need to be to get the right kind of people that you want, but not so specific as to throttle the overall volume and make your audience so niche that it becomes quite expensive. So that's always the trade-off. You're always looking for this kind of sweet spot between the audience size and their targeting profile. Obviously, these platforms have huge amounts of targeting functionality, and what a lot of people do straight away is they try and make use of all of it, and they end up with audiences that are only a few thousand people. Whereas what you're probably better off doing is picking the really key attributes that are right for you. So things like it may be industry combined with some job skills, or industry combined with some company sizes. Run that, see what happens, see what kind of response. And because of all of the kind of analytics and kind of information you get back from these campaigns, you can then feed that into the next iteration of your targeting. And that's how you basically optimize and refine your audience to find exactly what it is you want. And like Anne said, sometimes you find some surprises in there. The people that you might have thought were your customers aren't the people who kind of click and convert on your ads. So if you go too targeted straight away, what you might end up doing is excluding whole groups of people who could be really valuable customers for you that you just didn't realize you could unlock with social.
Yeah, I mean, we did it in both directions, didn't we? Because we weren't expecting the Instagram one. We just stuck it on automatic, and we realised that they were really powerful. There are some exceptions when you don't want the audience to be too large, and that's when you're paying on a CPM basis or an impression basis, because then you could be getting a lot more wastage. So sometimes it does depend on what the ad objective is as well. I've got a few more slides just from some of the analysis of the data. This is using a piece of software called Adespresso. You obviously get details within the Facebook campaign itself. It's just to give you an idea what the click-through rates were, the cost for clicks were, and the cost and in conversions. And you can see, you know, we had 96 conversions out of 207 clicks, which I think is just under 50%. So, oh yeah, sorry, got 46% conversion rate on there. Adespresso is quite useful because you can get quite a lot of additional information. So it allows you to sort of see things like the age and gender in a slightly different format, of which one worked really well. And also it does have some interests and targeting, which you don't get if you look in Facebook. So you don't get the information segmented in the same way. There is a free version of Adespresso, but if you want most of the really powerful functionality, you have to pay. And there is quite an argument against not going through third-party platforms for doing Facebook. You know, I think we mainly go directly through the platform because we think we're going to get better results. Do you want to comment on that before I do the last couple of slides on the tips? Is there any?
Yeah, they've all got their pros and cons. It's like if you use something like Hootsuite and stuff for your scheduling, all of these kind of pieces of software and technology are they're only as good as their integration and APIs that they have with the platforms. So sometimes what you can find is that you can have delays in getting some of the functionality in these third-party platforms as opposed to buying directly through Facebook Ads Manager, for example.
Excellent. Okay, I just got a couple of slides on tips. So first of all, testing different approaches. When we did this, we allocated a budget to test a range of different platforms, ad objectives, placements, and optimization methods. What we were doing was using the same ad creative and the same audience based on very similar job titles and job interests, and that allowed us then to sort of run almost like an experiment to actually test what worked and what didn't. We then reviewed the results and narrowed down the options in order to get the best CPA and volume of conversions. So this is why we've ended up running mainly Instagram and Facebook. For example, Facebook network audience didn't really work at all well, and it wasn't very good for us at all. You want to pause the poorer performing options in order to focus your budget on what works the best. Don't make too many assumptions. Let the data drive the strategy. For example, males on Instagram got some of our best results. But the other thing is that if you're used to using Google Ads, which obviously some of you were, you need to be careful you don't make decisions too quickly. You do need to allow Facebook to learn. So, for example, there is a bar, which, particularly if you're using conversion ad objective, which is what we did, you really need to leave it until you've got 50 conversions before you'll get the most data. So although it's very tempting to keep pausing it and getting rid of the stuff that isn't working, if you haven't got enough data, it just restarts from the beginning. You will find you'll be paying a lot more. Facebook's so sophisticated now. Sometimes you're almost better off letting it do the work for you, and that works if you've got the right ad objective, particularly with conversion ads. Your ads may get. Go on, sorry, Chris.
Just a quick one on that. If you keep tinkering with stuff as well, you put stuff back into its learning phase. So if you've got something that looks like it's working and it's come out of its learning phase, and you think, okay, that's great, but I would like to potentially try a slight change on it, what I would just suggest is pause the one that is working, duplicate it and make your change, and then run that. Because if it doesn't work out for you, you can always turn the old ad set back on with its kind of learning untouched. So that's just a kind of a note on that whole learning phase thing. Because otherwise, if you keep going in and changing it, they are getting more and more picky about what determines a kind of a significant edit, as they call it.
Okay. The other here is I'm getting signals that the network's a bit unstable again. Your ad will probably get likes, shares, and comments, and you have to be careful with the comments. So, for example, we were running ads for the Digital Marketing Institute, which I'll share with you in a minute, which is our qualifications and exams, our paid course, and we realised it wasn't working, and we realised that because it only has a problem in certain browsers. So majority of people it was fine with, and somebody left a comment, and of course if you don't respond to the comment it looks really bad. So you've got to treat it like an organic post as well, and make sure that you are keeping on top of those questions and comments. The other thing with lead generation forms is that the form itself is as important as the ad, because you need to emphasize the benefits of the leaving their details and making sure you collect the right information. Facebook conversions ads, you'll need to target as big an audience as you can, as long as it's still relevant, and that allows Facebook to do the work for you, which is what we were just talking about. And what it does is it shows the ads to users that are much more likely to convert. They've got a history of converting. You need to allow the conversion campaigns to learn, which is what we were talking about as well. Don't make too many changes, otherwise the learning just resets. You can see a rapid improvement in results as the campaign learns. You can start off at sort of CPA of £10 and go down to £2 within a couple of days by letting it do the work for you. But I see huge variations on a day-to-day basis, as I said. And sometimes if you have too big a budget, it's trying to find more. I actually found sometimes if you reduce the budget size to £10 a day, you actually get better conversions at a lower CPA, as it finds the most targeted users. You will find that if you've got similar audiences or overlapping audience, you may get one that will get more traffic than the other. And that tends to be based on the size of the audience. It is possible to go into the audience characteristics and understand what the overlap is and how much of your audience have seen the ads. And we'll get Chris to do that on another day, and he can go into some of the extra information that's available that most people don't see. You also need to check attribution windows, as Facebook has a habit of claiming lots of conversions, particularly through view-through conversions, and you will find that your data won't match analytics. They're just measuring different things. So we do have to report on both if it's for a client. And you definitely want to add UTM into the main URL when you're adding the ads. It doesn't seem to work if you just add it in the tracking section, and it won't come through to analytics. I do recommend that you make sure you have a consistent naming structure. We've got some ads that were running last year that just the source is paid social, whereas the current format is paid _ social. So you can see that they'll come through into different sections within analytics. Chris, did you want to add anything on that one? Anything there that you wanted to add?
No, I think obviously with the UTM stuff, you have also, for those familiar, source, medium, and campaign are the ones you have to have. Campaign content is a good way if you've got lots of different ads that you're running and you want to know the exact performance of specific ads in terms of what they end up doing when they get to your site. then make use of the campaign content. Facebook's pretty good in that when you are adding the tracking, it does have some dynamic parameters. So it's all about best practice. If you've got good naming conventions of your ads in your Facebook ad manager, you can just use the dynamic naming parameters basically when you're setting up your campaign, and it will pull through whatever the ad name is from Ads Manager. So yeah, it's that incentive to not just call them ad 1, ad 2, ad 3, ad 4.
Yeah, more description. Tips for LinkedIn: lead generation ads, message ads appear to provide the best option, but the cost per clicks are still expensive compared to Facebook, but often cheaper than Google ads, particularly in B2B. We do tend to run Facebook ads based on landing page views rather than clicks, which we didn't mention last time. And you often find that because there's so many other things they can click on, the landing page cost per landing page views are often for B2B as high as £1.50. But I've got some stuff running at the moment that's down at 50p, 30p. So it can really depend on just how level of competitiveness within that sector. Some targeting options are better in LinkedIn than Facebook, especially using skills for more niche B2B audiences. We talked about that quite. And later work has shown that video views can be very cheap and can be used to filter out your interested audience before remarketing or retargeting them with conversion ads, even if the remarketing happens in Facebook or Google. So what we have been doing, which I know is a subject for another day, is we've been narrowing down our audience in LinkedIn to the very, very specific people, getting them over to the site and then remarketing them with Facebook, which is much cheaper. Finally, you may want to consider setting up Facebook ads in third-party software such as AdExpresso. It does allow you to create more complex ad sets and provide additional insights, but to be honest, we tend to use directly into platform. You want to create on-page forms on your website using things like marketing automation software, so you can track these leads, identify individuals and nurture these leads, e.g. with email campaigns. So don't think this is just about paid, you can do email as well. Marketing automation software also allows you to track the leads to see if they convert later. And then you can import that data back into Analytics and Data Studio. And I'm sure we'll do a presentation on that at a later stage. And this then allows you to see which leads generated the most sales. So that's the stuff that won us the Drum Award with Switch My Business, where we actually follow those leads with a unique identifier all the way into Salesforce and then determined which ones actually created a sale. This is what Chris was talking about. Standardize your UTM codes and check different conversion points in Analytics. You can even create segments based on that. And make sure you invest in producing great content and make sure that your events and that you promote your events and you so if you're producing something like a white paper or ebook like the A10, you don't just have to do it online. You can actually physically give it out, send it in the post. And once upon a time, we used to go around to events and give it out as well. But those days seem to be long distance memory. I think that's probably the last slide. I've just got a couple of different things I just want to share with you. I just wanted to share a little bit about the DMI course, which is the CIM. Can you see that, guys? Is that on the screen?
Yep.
So this is the DMI and CIM qualification. The next one is in June. It's a 12-day course. You can either run that over 3 weeks or over 3 months. And we're going to have to start it in using this platform that we've presented today. So it'll still be live, but it won't be physically at the office. So as a result of that, we're offering a 20% discount to that, and that leads through to a level 4 qualification from the DMI and the CIM. You can actually go on to the academy.anicca.co.uk portal, and which is, let me just bring that one up. Can you see on my screen, you've got free resources. And if you go onto the Academy site, click on this one, you can request free access to all of our learning materials, apart from the DMI. And then finally, all of the heads of department are offering free 1-hour consultancy. If you've got a business in the UK or overseas and you'd like some time, we're able to offer some of our time while we're stuck at home. So this is Chris's offer. This goes through to our contact page on the Anicca site, or if you want to email me directly or Chris and our details on the landing page, you can contact us through that as well. But there's a couple of other staff. We've got Sook, Holly. I'm not sure whether Ed's on the call today, but there's a few of us that are able to also offer this as an extra help. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much for attending. Please carry on. We'll stay online for another few minutes and ask a few more questions. And if you want anything else, if you want to follow up, I think you'll also find that there's a feedback form that will come to you as well to give. So if you can give us some feedback, and then we'll get you to register for the one in 2 weeks' time. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Bye, guys.